Okay, great. So thank you for coming, everybody. And today I have the pleasure of introducing Teresa Wiedrick, who is a new author. And I'm sure she's going to tell you about a book, and she has a copy there to show you. And she's going to talk about self-care, nurturing the nurturer, because in home education, that's usually what we are, is we don't just teach, we have that parent hat and we nurture and do all those good things. So welcome, Teresa. Thank you so much for coming. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, I wish I could actually give you a cup of tea and bring you into my great room and have a cup of tea with you the good old-fashioned way, because even in a year that hasn't been like this last one, I would still do that. I would love to have a retreat one day where everybody could join in and we could just hang out and get to know each other a bit. And for those of us that have been doing this thing for a while, this homeschool mom thing, I think that we have this goal in encouraging new homeschool families or newer homeschool families this year, because there's a whole lot more of them. But no matter whether you are on that journey in the very beginning, or if you've been here, done this for a very long time, I am very familiar that this homeschool thing can be challenging, whether you are in the middle of it or at the beginning or near toward the end. It is a lot. Somewhere in my third year homeschooling, I was definitely done. I'll tell you the story of a moment when I may or may not have had my voice raised more than it should have. And I was definitely frustrated with how the kids were or were not engaging their school or the studies the way that I wanted them to. I certainly remember seeing a yellow school bus driving by, thinking, help me. If I could just get the kids on that yellow school bus, then everything would be okay. But the truth is that isn't actually what I wanted. It isn't what I really wanted. In the moment, it was what I wanted. I found myself reacting to the kids' squabbles in a way that was sort of unprecedented for me at the time. I felt like I was perpetually irritated by kids. And though I might have given you all the benefits to homeschooling, I know that in my heart, I was wondering, why am I doing this thing? Because I no longer enjoy it. I was done. I know we've all had those experiences along the way in homeschooling, and this year has made it even more challenging for us to maintain a sense of equilibrium in it all. I know for me at that time, I didn't feel good in my body. I didn't feel like I had any time alone. I just wanted to be in a room all by myself, thinking my quiet thoughts without anybody else's little voices asking me stuff. I did everything as perfectly as I could as a homeschool mom, at least the way that I perceived it. I don't think I was doing it perfectly, but at least in the moment, I definitely felt like what I was doing wasn't good enough. I learned I had to take care of me, and here's how I learned it. Really because I hit the wall, because I wanted to homeschool, but I didn't all at the same time. It just seemed too hard. And in fact, a friend who wasn't even a homeschool friend had said to me, you should really check out this TEDx talk. It was by Brené Brown. And it was something about authenticity or vulnerability. And I remember thinking, who am I? I don't even know what I like to do. I don't know who I am. I don't know that my purpose in life is really happening right here. I don't know that I have a functional hairbrush, or that I would even consider feeling good in my body was a thing that would make me, I don't know, run for the hills, because that would mean that I had to do something for myself. I was accustomed to doing things for my kids. I wasn't accustomed to doing them for me. I was accustomed to thinking about all the things for the kids, which is a typical experience for us as homeschool parents. We really are thinking about all the things because we want to offer them everything, provide everything, all the things, even a clean house and drives to all sorts of extracurricular things. We want to do everything for them. And sometimes we forget that we actually are separate human beings that have separate needs, just like them. And maybe we're responsible for them. And we obviously need to take care of them. We need to nurture them too, but we also need to nurture ourselves as well. So whether you've been homeschooling for a month or 25 years or, just a couple years, you need to take care of you as much as you need to take care of your kids. In fact, before the homeschool year happens and you are planning for your children and you've got all sorts of things lined up, curriculum plans, all that exciting stuff, it's time to think about what you might need during the year as well. Have you experienced this? This is one mom telling me, she said, I love having my kids with me. I love learning alongside them and watching them grow, but some days I just want to be by myself, not do anything for anyone, just sit in a room. When someone says self-care, I think pedicures and wasting time. I don't have the bandwidth to do any more. Yep, I feel her, been there, thought that. Another mom had said, I love this homeschool lifestyle, but self-care, I don't have time to get the laundry done before someone says they need more socks. Do you feel that? I've been there. I'm trying to fit in math between breakfast and piano practice. I do not have time for me. We've been taking care of our kids' educations and their interests and their extracurricular things and maybe their social opportunities, which has been more of a challenge this year, but we've been taking care of their homes, really everything. And it really is time for us to also consider taking care of us and nurturing us as well. So if you identify with any of those thoughts, because I have been there, done that, and I have not met a lot of moms this year that haven't said something like that, then I want to share the 5 pillars of homeschool self-care that I have learned for myself over the last 15 years. Just today, I released a podcast. I'm a podcaster at Homeschool Mama Self-Care with a very interesting fellow who is a trauma specialist and therapist. And he is talking all about how to engage our challenges. He's not specifically a homeschool family, but our challenges and our experiences in this year. And what a perfect timing to come full circle for me, because this fellow was the first person to teach me about boundaries. And boundaries are a big discussion point that, whether you discuss them openly or not, really are something that every homeschool parent needs to address. But so what are the 5 components that help us take care of us in our homeschool? Of course, I've been learning this in real life still because I am a homeschool mom presently. I have a 20-year-old that no longer is at home. She's in her 2nd year of university. I've got an 18-year-old daughter who is about to graduate, and she hopes be in Toronto for ballet school in the fall. And I have a 15-year-old, almost 16-year-old daughter that just for the first time ever this year went to high school and has recently been brought home because of the COVID stuff. And then I have a son who is 12, who is officially in grade 7. And so I am still in the middle of this, just as you probably are as well. So I have a podcast. I started before all of this happened, but just a couple months before the pandemic started last year. And I must say, I highly recommend starting a podcast because it's a fabulous approach to socializing over the course of the year. It's been a lot of fun. But I also wrote a book, which Judy had mentioned. In fact, she helped me name the book. So it's Homeschool Mama Self-Care, Nurturing the Nurturer. It's the nurturing the nurturer part that she came up with, and it is spot on, a wonderful way to describe what the intentions behind that book are. And that book was published later in the pandemic, but it was written before this whole year even began. And so when it came out, or when my publisher said, let's publish it, I said, I don't know, will anybody actually want any of this? Will they actually care about this right now? And she laughed, because I don't know, it's my baby. So I'm thinking, do they really want to hear this? And in reality, I've learned that it might have been written for me, because I have put feet to the ground on this book this year out of necessity, as we all are being challenged to do, taking care of ourselves so we can take care of our kids in a whole new way. So I am accustomed to doing, I have online courses and personal coaching as well. But okay, here's the 5, let's get into it. The 5 components or the 5 pillars of self-care for the homeschool mama. I'll give them to you right off the bat, and I will explain them as I go. You got to know your why. That's the first thing. You need to know why you're homeschooling. You're going to instill healthy practices, the care and keeping of the homeschool mama, shifting perspective or altering expectations. That's a big one. What is an education anyways? The fourth is learning to recognize you outside your homeschool mama role. And the fifth is learn to deal with those days and your uncomfortable feelings. So I talk about those days because those days are not the ones that you thought you were signing up for, but actually there are a few of them. Just a couple. So 5 realms of self-care. Pull out a journal or pull out a piece of paper and a pen, or just grab your phone. And as I am sharing about these 5 pillars, I encourage you to write down the things that seem the most pertinent to you, the ones that you say, yeah, I think that's an issue for me. I'm not going to ask you to share it later. You may if you want to, but you do not have to. But the goal is for you to identify what are the things, what are the areas that I really am challenged by and that I really need to work on. So you're going to do a self-assessment. Now, I have timed this discussion and I know that I cannot spend the next 10 minutes giving you the self-care quiz that I have for homeschool moms. I don't have it out officially, but I have it in my Homeschool Mama retreat online. But I do want to ask you this. I'll ask you a couple of questions just to get your mind thinking about what is self-care anyways, because I know that when I talk to other people about what self-care means, it does not always mean the same thing from one person to the next. No matter how many people I chat about self-care with, I do not hear differently, a much variation. Usually first people, their instincts are Netflix, dark chocolate, the spa, pedicures, that kind of stuff. And though those sound great, I think Netflix and dark chocolate have definitely been almost addictions for most people this year, definitely including me. So I don't mean those kinds of things, but let's see, a quick assessment. Have you run your annual marathon? No? Okay, deleted your streaming app? It's an addiction. How about rendering your chocolate addiction, or rendering your casual wardrobe for your Sunday best, or visiting the spa on the regular? Yeah, me neither. But there are certain things that are really important to identify, like what is your morning routine, or do you have one to start your homeschool day? What are the triggers for you and how, or triggers for guilt? What are your triggers for feeling overwhelmed? Do you feel satisfied with your efforts, your routines, or your planning? Do you feel more angry than you would like with your kids? Do you have enough time outside of your family? Are you routinely physically active? Do you have time to develop you? Are you maintaining a nourishing diet that actually feeds your brain? Do you get enough restorative sleep? Do you have time alone? And I'm not talking about the grocery store. Quiet time in the grocery store is not quiet time for mom. Do you get social time? Do you know how to grapple with your own boredom? Do you have that perpetual feeling of you're just not doing enough? So what does self-care mean to you? Is it a list of 50 things that you could do this week? Is it maybe that spa visit, or is it looking holistically at all your different needs? What is the thing that you think of when you think of the word self-care? There are no right answers. This assessment is simply just here to help you and understand what you need. So the first thing that I've learned is that the first pillar is know your why. Why are you doing this homeschooling thing? There's not a right answer here either, but knowing your why actually helps you, because why you homeschool influences how you homeschool, and how you homeschool will most definitely influence how happy you are homeschooling. The reasons why that you're doing it need to be congruent with how you're doing it. you're not going to know that straight off the top, and you're going to probably spend numbers of years trying to figure out exactly that. Why are you doing this? And how is the way that we're doing it actually working or benefiting us? Is it helping us? Is it helping my children? What are you really feeling about homeschooling? What would be the words that you would write down that, they'd never be found out by your kids or by someone significant, or about, maybe by your mother-in-law who's absolutely against homeschooling and can't believe you would choose this thing? Just what is the thing that you're genuinely feeling about homeschooling right now? We all have different reasons for homeschooling. For me, in a word, it's freedom. Freedom to have that personalized education, freedom to enable socialization in a very unique, intentional way, to travel as we once did, to do life on our own terms with our own routine and our schedule, and most importantly, to enable our kids to grow up to become who they were meant to be on this planet, so they could develop their own sense of purpose, to have their own clarity and their own vision for their lives. So we don't all homeschool for the same reasons. Freedom is my word, but it does help me to check myself every morning and say, okay, so is how we're doing this like actually looking like freedom? Or is it some other approach? Is it schoolish? Am I doing it because I feel like I'm supposed to? Then I can start getting more congruent with what's my real reason for doing it, and is it congruent with how I'm actually doing it? So we need to be clear why we're homeschooling. I have a PDF available for those who actually like journaling and sitting down with their thoughts and considering why they're doing what they're doing. And it has questions that you don't have to quickly jot down right now, but it actually asks you, write the reasons you want to homeschool. What do you look forward to as you homeschool? What are the challenges that you anticipate? So I've got a PDF of those questions available for you upon request. Be clear on the reasons that you're choosing to homeschool, because your reasons influence how you choose to engage your kids. You will know how to engage your non-homeschool needs better, and you will know how you choose to actually homeschool. The reason that brings you to homeschooling might not actually be the reason that you maintain over the course of years. We start with one reason, and then it will shift gradually. I actually share in my very first podcast episode about why we chose to homeschool and what my vision was at that time. And it's remarkably different than what it is now, this many years later. It's actually kind of amusing. I talk even about having 3 little girls in 3 little white dresses running through Prince Edward Island Garden. We don't live in Prince Edward Island. And, sitting on our white couch in the afternoons with a read aloud, drinking tea, having scones. And wouldn't you know it, you can see right behind me, it's not a couch, but we still have a white corner chair. That is the epitome of homeschool optimism, don't you think? A white sofa. Okay, so second pillar is a perspective shift. And it is something that I know Judy Arnall and Robin Robertson have probably shared with you today already, that what is an education anyways? And that is a really compelling question, one that we really need to consider, both our influence as our own experience in education and our partners, if we have one, and our children's experience of education before they homeschool. All those things will influence what we think an education is. And you get to decide. And from my perspective, I don't want to influence you and tell you this is what an education is, but I will ask you a few questions. I think that typically our culture says that we have an education so that we can have letters after our names if we're successful. We will have a 6-digit income. We will have a double car, attached garage, an annual trip to a hot location. At the end of our days, maybe if we're living this life on purpose, we can also maybe, golf on the golf course. There's something cliche about that. But it's all these sorts of things that we're told this is what an education is equipping you to do. And I just don't think that that is what all of us were meant to do. At the end of our days, we have to ask ourselves, are we living our lives on purpose? Are we actually encouraging our kids to live their lives on purpose? Are we uncovering and helping them uncover who they were meant to be so they can grow up to do their thing, have their internal sense of purpose, maybe even feel content doing it, and somehow find a way to monetize it so they can support themselves, maybe a family, and do the things they want to do. So the question is, what is an education anyways? And because I'm a homeschool mom and I did dabble in Latin, in fact, my oldest is in college doing Latin right now. The root word for education is educato, which means to raise up. And I ask you, to raise up what? To raise up a school system or to raise up an individual child? And I would say it is an individual child. So this is what I've actually come up with as what education is. It includes a specific child. It hopefully has an engaged adult that will facilitate that child, listening to them, paying attention to their aptitudes, their interests, their curiosities, and finds them learning opportunities. And if that's an education, then you have a whole lot less expectation on what you need to do in a day, which absolutely benefits your headspace and how you're engaging your kids and how you're thinking about the whole thing. There's a whole lot more peace, a lot less doubt and overwhelm. The next thing I'm going to share with you is about the care and keeping of the homeschool mama's body, her body. Okay, so here's the thing. I actually think that most of us could be doing an entire nutrition class. We could be giving each other a nutrition class. We know we shouldn't be eating Fruit Loops every morning. We know that we probably shouldn't be eating Lay's potato chips every night of the week or dark chocolate, an entire bar. We know these things. We know that the only healthy vegetable is not kale and that quinoa is a fad and it's a good thing, high in protein, don't get me wrong, but we know what the right things are. But I think sometimes we are told from the culture that there are certain ways to engage your body and eating and exercise and all those things in a way that actually should facilitate us to all be runway models. And I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of homeschool moms that are runway models, although if there is one, I would love to meet her. The goal is instead, when we're eating, when we're choosing our diet, is to actually feed our brains, to fuel it with the best possible fuel. So the nutritionists say, eat your rainbow, eat a lot of colors of the rainbow. Instead of thinking, what can I not eat? Think about, am I eating enough of the stuff that's really enabling my brain to function the best that it can? One of the easiest things that I can do as a homeschool mom is to have a green smoothie ready in the fridge, in jars, 5 days or 5 mornings a week. Now, if you have really little kids and you're thinking there's just no way I couldn't do that, okay, I again will say this the entire time, that when you have little kids, it's a season of a lot. And sure enough, soon enough, that season will slow down, it will get quieter, and you will be able to do more for yourself and also make green smoothies in the morning. But there's something about a green smoothie that really does have really clean fuel for your brain, and it's easy and you don't have to think about it. Supplements too, get your greens, get your vitamins, all that stuff. Have a plan though, that's the key. When people talk about not knowing how to cook, then I just say, okay, focus on 5 simple meals and do them on repeat over and over and over until it becomes really easy. Also, the holy trinity of diet in the homeschool is to teach your kids to cook, because, and here's why I think it's a holy trinity, because you're gardening, you are teaching the kids basic life skills and obviously cooking. And well, maybe it's more than a trinity, because you're teaching your kids to feed you so you don't have to cook. And though I know that some kids are not capable, if they cannot hold a knife and be safe, they are too young. But most kids can learn to help in the kitchen. And in my experience, they can find some way to make something for everybody. Okay, I'm going to move on from the diet because you do know how to teach that. The exercise. Again, same thing, the messages from the culture tell us how we're supposed to look. And I have definitely had that message growing up. And the goal is not about what you look like, but burning off tension and enabling your brain to both sleep better through the night and just have a break. There is something really, really powerful about those endorphins. 20 minutes a day of exercise in a form that you think is fun, not something that you think everybody is saying this is the newest, coolest thing, like Peloton. Super cool. I don't want to be on something that costs me a lot of money, and I would rather fly away to Hawaii, although I can't. And then, or I would rather be outside. And also I find it really boring. So I don't want to do that, but find something that you love. Sleeping. This is probably the most fundamental aspect of self-care, and it's really not that fun to talk about. But just consider that when you are finally getting that quiet time in the evening, and the kids are finally sleeping or finally being quiet, that if you are going to bed too late, you are robbing yourself in the morning of your happy juice. So just food for thought. I know that it can be a very challenging thing to do. There are certain things that really will attack your sleep, like caffeine late at night or having screens right before bed. Obviously having kids sleeping in your bed, but I've been there, done that too, and that's just not to be helped. There is a season of homeschooling and parenting that is just, it is what it is. But there are certain things that really help your sleep, like exercise, like routines, like supplements. Time alone. And like I said before, I don't mean time alone in the grocery store. That's not fun. That's not time alone. I mean having quiet space with yourself. This is a really tricky thing to do right now because with more restrictions, it's harder to just get out and do things. I know in the thick of it last year, a lot of people were saying that they would buckle their little kids into their car seats and just go for a drive. If that's what you can do, that's what you can do. If you can get away and your kids are actually old enough to look after the youngest ones, then the goal is to do that, even if it's just a 20-minute block around the walk or a walk around the block. But definitely use those older kids. I have an entire post on my website all about a variety of different things that you can do to find time or quiet in your homeschool world that frankly could be its own pillar. But mindfulness is another aspect that sometimes we underestimate, just those quick 5-minute check-ins throughout the day to stop, breathe slowly, and ask ourselves, how are you feeling? Even though that is not necessarily a true break away from our kids, it does help us to emotionally regulate and bring us to a quieter place than ourselves. Or noise cancellation earphones, if you can do it. I personally have done podcasts for years, and that helps me to go into a happy place, into a quiet place on my own. So mental stimulation, there's something that we haven't considered as homeschool moms, that we are enabling our kids to learn and to have all their interests tapped into, but we can actually include ours at the same time that we're enabling them. We can do things like, for myself, I was very interested in Impressionist art. So we did do a lot of Impressionist art. Or I'm also reading right now with my 12-year-old a book about classical music, which I'm interested in, and he will humor me for a little bit. And so he's not only hearing a little bit of my interests, but he's also attaching like this warm memory in his world that he, at the end of the day, he will know that mom loves these certain things. And I also get to learn the things that I also like to learn as well. Keep your interests alive. I know that there's a lot going on right now, but as a homeschool mom, you can always incorporate the things that you like to do as well as your kids. So the next pillar that I have to share with you is about your identity. So a discussion point, I wish I knew who exactly I was speaking to, because I think this is a pertinent discussion point, especially in a little bit of the later years of homeschooling, when you've been doing this homeschooling long enough that you've got the preposition poem memorized of Susan Wise Bauer's First Language Lessons preposition poem. So, you know, we all do different things. We engage in different curriculums. Sometimes we're just full on engaging in an unschooling or self-directed learning, but we sometimes, if we have enough kids, we're repeating the same stuff over and over. And for 1,000,001 reasons, homeschooling can get boring. Yes, it can. If we are maintaining those same routines over and over. So I say, change it up. Frankly, you thinking about yourself as a homeschool mom, one day you won't be a homeschool mom. One day your kids will grow up, and then what will you be? And then what will you do? So you, at the moment, you need to be able to nurture yourself as well as nurturing your kids. You need to actually remember who you were before you were a mom. What did you like to do? You might have a lot of responsibility in the home right now in many different ways. Maybe you even have a job outside of the home that you brought home, or that you're also homeschooling while you're working. That's a lot of responsibility. And it is really easy after 15, 20 years of homeschooling to forget who you are. And if you were me, and I know there are many of you, you didn't know who you were before either. So then I encourage you, from one homeschool mom to another, you get to nurture the person that is you entirely outside of that homeschool mom role. You do you, the cool folks say, but who be you? And that is something that is really a seminar unto itself, but is really important in your homeschool. You are establishing, you are showing your kids how to be in the world. And as they say, more is caught than taught. And that is true. They're watching how you show up in your world, and how you show up in relationships, and how you just show up. And so not only is there that sense of responsibility to your kids, but this is your life. You get to do things that are interesting to you. You get to develop who you are. So I have an entire checklist all about You Be You checklist that's also available in Steps to Becoming You, or really to uncovering who you are. So I have that to share as well. And the last thing that I wanted to share with you is talking about those days, because I think one of the biggest things that we can engage as homeschool moms is actually acknowledging that we have those days. You know, those days. Okay, that day, was it this day? Was it today? Because there have been times where I'm like, I'm not supposed to still have those days if I'm talking to other people about those days. That's not real. I didn't have one of those days today, but I'm sure it wasn't that long ago. We need to accept that there are those days, and that when we signed up for homeschooling, it wasn't quite what we thought. There are amazing days, and the sum total of all the experience that we have about homeschooling is amazing. And it really is an ideal way to approach family life, and an ideal way to experience or enable an education for our kids. And it's nothing is ideal, and nothing is utopia. And probably the reason I've learned that that is the case is because I'm a human being with human kids. And you too. We grapple with uncomfortable feelings. Those days are loaded with uncomfortable feelings because we're humans, and they're not bad feelings. When we're frustrated with our kids, it's not a bad feeling because we doubt, why are we even doing this homeschool thing? It's not bad because we feel overwhelmed and other people think we're privileged to be at home with our kids, but we would really like a break. It's not bad to feel those feelings. They're uncomfortable because we don't always know what to do with them. There's not possible to actually experience life outside of those days. It's not a thing. We have to accept that just as the clouds in the sky are constantly changing, so are our emotions. We feel feelings, and then they pass. We feel very intense, and then it passes, just like the sky. And so our goal is to be in acceptance of all of that change, of really our emotional climate. It would be nice if it looked pretty, but it doesn't. When we're honest with ourselves, when we can write in a journal every day and talk about our real feelings, or we can talk with a therapist if we need to, because it's worth its weight in gold when we do, having an objective outside source when we're really grappling with something and we really don't know what to do with it. Very important to do that. But on the regular, without a therapist, we still need to be engaging our uncomfortable feelings and being comfortable with the uncomfortable. If this year hasn't taught us anything, it is that. So we need to learn to sit with our discomfort, let ourselves just breathe, because by the way, when you breathe, it really does slow down all of your physical systems. It actually requires that your cardiovascular system slows down, and then that fight or flight will gradually pass. And then you can get control of your prefrontal cortex again, that part of your brain that likes to think and actually make healthy decisions and not react in unreasonable ways. You can go back to what is the right thing right now? How do I be proactive in this instead of reactive? So you let yourself breathe, you allow the emotion to dissipate, and then you ask yourself, what's underlying that feeling? What's the actual need underneath that uncomfortable feeling? Someone said, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. And you, my homeschool mama friend, signed up to learn how to sail. Yes, you didn't even know it. Neither did I. I had no idea what we were signing up for when we started homeschooling. People ask us about homeschool socialization and they ask us about academics, and I don't know why. Because what they should be asking is, so how are you engaging you in this homeschool thing? How are you dealing with the uncomfortable days? How are you engaging all the really tough stuff about learning about yourself? Because your kids are mini mirrors and they reflect back the stuff that we need to learn about ourselves. And I don't know about you, but that is not what I signed up for when I decided to parent or homeschool. But anyways, it was. So I had initially decided I would talk with you about grappling with overwhelm, and I have a checklist on that. And then I decided that that was not the most pertinent thing. I know for sure that, and definitely something that a lot of people talk about is doubt, and I have a discussion about that as well. And yet, I think the most pertinent thing these days that I'm learning about and that I've been asked to share in a different seminar is about how to be in the world as it is, in the challenge that it is, because I'm hearing that people are very overwhelmed, not necessarily just with homeschooling and being with their kids all the time and having more restrictions, but more in this year's context of all the expectations on the, different COVID related stuff. So I hate to remind you that that's a thing, but I am seeing that a lot of people are more overwhelmed by how to deal with that, how to be with your kids. That is tricky. I'm in that as much as anybody is. We are all on this uncertain sea together, and it's shaky and it's rocky, and we all experience it differently, and it's all happening to everybody, but we're all in different boats. We're experiencing it very differently, and we have very different stories around it and how we're engaging it. And so that is where I decided to focus in about our uncomfortable feelings. That uncomfortable feeling of, can we get back to normal? Do we have to do this anymore? And how do I just be in the context of my family? Because it's quite saturated right now. And this is what I'm hearing from others outside of my own sphere. And the three things that I can say to that I know I'm practicing for myself and I know are true in most stressful times in our lives are to accept the reality of what this is, to practice just being instead of always trying to do, and no surprise, to self-nurture. I think those are the three basic things that we need to do during this time. The very first quote that I memorized as a kid, I don't know why this one, was Henry David Thoreau, who said, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. I don't know why I memorized that one, but I didn't get it as a young kid. And as an adult, totally get it. And I think this year, it's true. We are all having a very challenging time on the water in some form or fashion, or we're trying to forget that it's happening and just ignore and go on. But we're all having to deal with this. And we're not all necessarily doing the best by ourselves in how we're engaging it. So I will leave you on, well, I'll say this, that I again affirm that we need to acknowledge our feelings no matter what they are. to actually be able to recognize that we're going to ride roller coaster waves, and we need to allow ourselves to do so, to accept that we're going to. Sometimes we don't want to feel our feelings because we think if we don't feel them, then they're not real. That's not true. We will have them manifested somehow, some way. If it's in our physical body or in a relationship challenge, it will come out in some way. So we need to acknowledge our feelings first. And if we don't want to acknowledge them all the time, 24/7, then I say schedule them in. Actually schedule a time in the day when you are feeling all the feelings, preferably not before bed or in the middle of the night. Plan maybe in the morning or in the afternoon, sit with your journal, sit with a therapist, sit with a friend that actually helps you through things, and acknowledge what you're really feeling. Let the kids know if you're in a really challenging moment or experience right now, to let them know, but be judicious with your choice in how you're expressing things. Careful is what I would say. Definitely create memories right now that even now, one day, hopefully we'll be able to look back and say, wow, that was a lot for everybody. But remember when we went outside every day, or remember when we played every game in the house, or whatever it is, it will become bittersweet. Expect your unreliable emotional roller coaster emotions to interrupt your day, your homeschool day. It will happen. It will happen once a month, premenstrually anyways. But when big things happen, it will happen with more irregular regularity. Get outside help. I'm going to say it again. Therapists, worth their weight in gold. They're objective, though they may care about you and show empathy towards you. They are not invested in your life, so their objectivity is so valuable and useful for you. And they have tools that will help you figure out how to do whatever it is you need to do, or unravel what you need to unravel. Expect that you won't always know what to do. I did say consider sending the kids to school for a season, and I think that might apply at different times, not necessarily now, but I think sometimes we need to let go of our preconceived notions about how homeschooling is supposed to look, and maybe there's a time where we actually do send them to school. And that would just give us a time to take a breather and recollect and think about, what do I really want to do? How do I reimagine my homeschool so that I actually want to be doing it again? And of course, I'll say this every single time whenever I talk to any homeschool mom, and I love hearing someone say it to me: alter your expectations, because that is a thing that you will learn from the beginning of your parenting years to the end, that you need to alter them. Be more realistic with your actual kids in front of you and your actual ability to emotionally regulate, acknowledging what you're really feeling and how you're dealing with it, or how you're not dealing with it. So now is the time, especially in these stressful times, to really insert self-care practice here, whatever it is that really is the most valuable thing for you. What do you need? Whatever you need, find a way to engage that. And I know that it's not always easy to do. So if you're in that scenario where you think, I don't know how to engage this, and then I go back to that discussion of, if it's if it's a very big thing, find a therapist online. And also, you're welcome to join our Homeschool Mama support group on Facebook. But accept and remember that good stuff comes out of bad stuff. Like memes, this year has been fabulous for hilarious memes, don't you think? That Bernie Sanders, whether you loved him or didn't love him, he was hilarious. And there were so many other hilarious memes and communal merriment. Like for my 47th birthday, I wanted to create a paper mache COVID virus and smash it to smithereens. So many clever things that came out of this challenging time. So remember that hard is not forever. So keep on keeping on. And in the words of Mother Teresa, the real one, we can do no great things, only small things with great love. So nurture you. Be still, do less, get comfortable with solitude, get comfortable just being during this time. I am going to stop for questions if you have them. I was intending to write a little, or to share a little final love letter to you from my book, Homeschool Mama Self-Care, but you will actually see me On Fridays on my Instagram page, Homeschool Mama Self-Care, I'll do a little reading from here. And I'm on my Facebook page as well. And I'm about to release the Homeschool Mama Retreat, though it is virtual. And I can't invite you into my home at this point. I would be delighted. And actually, I mean that because I have a bed and breakfast that I haven't been able to open for the last 2 summers. And my intention is to actually create a Homeschool Mama Retreat at some point in the next couple of years, which would be so much fun. But in the meantime, I've got the Homeschool Mama Retreat virtually. So that's all I'm going to share with you today. If you would like to ask any questions, you're welcome to do that.
That was awesome, Teresa. Anybody have any questions in the few minutes we got left? We might not. It's late in the day, so I think people. So maybe we'll close it there. And Teresa, I want to thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with us and so many great points. I'm like, yes, so true, so true. And I think you have so much to share. And I highly recommend your book. I highly recommend, hope to see your retreat. That looks great. And highly recommend catching up with you on the Fridays.
Yeah,
so
let's do it.
Yeah, so thank you so much for coming. And
so
our audience says thank you too. It was very helpful and resourceful.
Thank you so much. All the best. I'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.